Hi guys, and welcome back to Practical and Healing Applications of A Course in Miracles with me, Anna Rebecca Quinn. Thank you for joining this broadcast. And we're going to be talking about A Course in Miracles like we always do. But the first thing I want to do is I want to do a little sound check to make sure that you guys can hear me okay. Just doing a sound check, see how that sounds. And then we are going to get into the section. So, how does the sound sound? I've got this microphone. Oh, I don't have that microphone on. Here's the microphone. Okay. Sound is good. Okay, sound is good. Great. Okay. I tried to go live also on my YouTube channel, but for some reason that didn't work. So it's Facebook tonight, and then I will upload this later to my YouTube channel. So welcome everybody, and thank you for being here. Thank you, honey. We are going to be talking about A Course in Miracles, which we always talk about in my classes. I'm a Course in Miracles teacher. I have been teaching and studying Course in Miracles for 41 years now. It's my passion. I love it. And the main reason why is because it works. Like I always say, they don't call it A Course in Miracles for nothing. Right? There's a reason that this curriculum is called A Course in Miracles. This is a self-study curriculum that many people find helpful to study with somebody who has been studying it for a long time, but essentially it is a self-study curriculum, and the purpose of this curriculum is peace of mind. That is the goal of this curriculum, peace, because when you have peace of mind, you have everything. So that's what it's about, and I'm just thinking, I'm streaming on StreamYard, so I have a lot of banners I can put up as to where we're at and all kinds of things, but it seems like I've been having issues with StreamYard, so doing a little something different right now. So thank you for your patience with me while I go through my technical learnings. And where we're going to be reading from today is in the Blue Book, A Course in Miracles, the Blue Book, which is the edited edition. And we're going to be in chapter 14, section 3, and the title of this section is The Decision for Guiltlessness. And Greg, if you're listening and you can hear me, if you wouldn't mind writing in there chapter 14, section 3, The Decision for Guiltlessness, that would be so helpful since I don't have my banners to use that I normally have when I'm using StreamYard. So it's chapter 14, section 3, The Decision for Guiltlessness. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. All right, now I've titled this lesson, Learning How to Be Happy. I know that sounds kind of funny, like learning how to be happy. That's not something we typically think about, something that we learn or that we have to learn. But this section, obviously, learning happiness is something that we do need to learn how to experience, especially if we're not experiencing happiness. Okay, well, if you're not experiencing happiness, it means that you haven't learned how to be happy. You haven't learned what happiness is, where happiness really comes from. And so in this section, it talks about that this is how you learn how to be happy. That happiness comes from an awareness of the fact of your guiltlessness. It's as simple as that. That our suffering is coming from a belief in our guilt, belief that we are guilty, the belief that sin is real, and the belief that we are guilty, right? That is where suffering and unhappiness comes from A Course in Miracles perspective. That's what A Course in Miracles says, that unhappiness, suffering comes from the belief in sin, which leads to the belief that we are guilty, right? If you are sinful, if you're born in sin and you're sinful, that means you're guilty. And if you believe that you are guilty, then essentially and unconsciously you believe that you deserve not happiness and love, but punishment. And so the belief in sin and the belief that you are guilty is something that prohibits you from unconsciously believing that you deserve to be happy. And so we're going to hear about how to learn how to be happy. Learning how to be happy. That's what I titled this. So I want you to use this, apply this. This is a practical course witnessed to by its results. I want you to use this class today, whenever it is you're watching it, to apply it to wherever it is that you are suffering, wherever it is that you are not experiencing happiness. This section, these ideas in this section have the truth that can set you free from that belief in sin, from that belief in guilt, and remove the obstacles for you to experience happiness. The happiness that is your birthright as a child of God, the happiness that is natural to you and in the universe, that is your right, that is being offered to you, that is reality all the time, but that we are blocking with our belief in sin and guilt that we all learned, right? You know, all of our major religions, what they have in common is they all have in common the belief that we are guilty, that we are sinful, that sin is real, meaning that there's something that you could do that would so offend God that that you would be deserving of punishment by God. So all three of our major religions teach that. And even if you were raised not in one of the three major world religions, you still are learning, because it's the belief system of the world, that you are guilty, that you're sinful, and that you deserve punishment to correct that guilt. Now, if punishment actually corrected guilt and sin, then we would all be blissed out, enlightened masters. So obviously, punishment does not correct our belief in guilt and sin. Right? So we are going to hear about what does correct the misperception that we all learned that we're guilty and the sin is real. We're going to hear about the truth that does correct our belief in sin and guilt. And so we're going to be hearing about the truth that does remove the obstacles that we have put up to experiencing true and lasting happiness. So, does that sound practical? All right. Okay, the section, we are in chapter 14, section 3 in the Course in Miracles Blue Book. Chapter 14, section 3, the decision for guiltlessness. We are going to learn how to be happy in this section by deciding for our guiltlessness, which is the truth about ourselves. Now, we didn't learn guiltlessness about ourselves from the past. And so now we have to learn about the truth of our guiltlessness and our innocence. And we have to learn that we can decide for our guiltlessness instead of guilt and actually experience happiness. That's what we're going to hear about in this today. All right? So chapter 14, section 3 in the Blue Book. Okay. Hi, Jean. Lovely to see you. All right, here we go. The decision for guiltlessness. The happy learner cannot feel guilty about learning. So, if you want to learn how to be happy, the happy learner The happy learner is somebody who has learned how to be happy, right? Because we all learned that we were guilty from the time that we were born, we haven't learned how to be happy. If you were taught that you're guilty, you learned how to be unhappy. And so we want to learn how to be happy. We want to be happy learners. And the first sentence tells us that you can't learn how to be happy while you feel guilty about learning. The happy learner, the one who learns how to be happy, cannot feel guilty about still learning how to be happy. Okay? And this is so essential to learn how to be happy. You cannot feel guilty about still learning how to be happy. This is so essential to learning that it should never be forgotten. The guiltless learner learns easily because their thoughts are free. But for your thoughts to be free of guilt so that you can learn easily how to be happy, this entails the recognition that guilt is interference, which means that guilt serves no useful function at all. Wow. I'm going to say that again. It's very powerful. The guiltless learner, the person who learns easily because their thoughts are free of guilt, entails the recognition that guilt is only interference. It's not helpful at all, and guilt serves no useful function at all. Wow. Okay, so if you want to learn how to be happy, then you must learn that guilt serves no helpful, useful function at all. It doesn't help you to be a better person, like we've learned. You know, what we learned in the past is if you don't feel guilty, you're a psychopath, right? That's what we learned in the past, right? But the truth is that guilt does not help you learn at all anything that is helpful and useful. Guilt does not help you to be a better person. Guilt does not enable you to learn how to do anything. Guilt serves no useful function at all. So if you want to if you want to be a happy learner, if you want to learn how to be happy, if you want to be able to learn easily because your thoughts are free of guilt, then the first thing you must accept is that guilt serves no useful function at all. Guilt is only interference. Wow. Just that first paragraph alone is kind of mind-blowing, because we all learned that, oh, well, if you want to be a good person, you got to feel guilty. Oh, and if you want to stop doing that thing, that mistake that you did, that you got in trouble for, then you better feel guilty about it. We've learned that unless you feel guilty about it, then you'll just keep on doing it, right? That's what we learned in the past. But obviously that's not true, because a lot of those things that we do that obviously hurt us or others, we give ourselves lots of guilt about it. The world gives us tons of guilt about it. But does that make us stop doing it? No. And as a matter of fact, the more guilt you receive, the more punishment you receive, the more guilty you feel, the more compelled you are to do it some more. If feeling guilty about doing something kept you from doing it, well, then that would be great. You know, we wouldn't all be doing the things that we feel guilty about doing, right? Yes, no YouTube. Yeah, I tried YouTube, Gene, and for whatever reason, it wasn't working tonight. So we're on YouTube. Sorry about that. I know you like to watch this class on YouTube on the big screen. Okay, right. Like Greg says, like what we learned in the past is if you want to be good, then you need to confess that you're bad. That's what we learned. Now, if that way worked, then we would all be experiencing freedom from guilt, and we would all be experiencing happiness. The Course in Miracles tells us that you can't experience happiness while you're experiencing guilt. They contradict each other completely. They are complete opposites, and you can't be happy and experience happiness while you are believing you are guilty. They don't go together. As a matter of fact, you only experience real happiness when you are not feeling guilty. Okay. Now, feeling guilty. So the goal here is to be free of guilt, right? Now, how do you know that you feel guilty? Like a lot of us, people who've been in metaphysics and spiritual teachings for a long time would say, well, I gave up guilt. I don't believe in guilt. But you still feel guilty if when you do something that that was a mistake, you feel ashamed and you punish yourself. Or when other people make a mistake, you give them guilt, right? If you're giving other people guilt for making a mistake, then for sure you feel guilty and ashamed whenever you have made a mistake. How often do you do something and then you feel bad about that? Okay, so that lets you know you still do feel guilty. You still do believe in sin, and you still do believe that you are guilty, even though you may have left your religion a long, long time ago. The religions that practice and preach guilt. Well, I left that. I left my religion a long time ago. I don't believe in guilt and sin anymore. Yeah, but when you do something that was a mistake, do you feel like, oh, I'm just learning, I'm still innocent? Or do you beat yourself over the head with the guilt or shame sledgehammer? And when other people make a mistake, do you give them guilt? Okay. So even though you may say, well, I left my religion long ago and I don't believe in that concept of sin and guilt anymore, you still are demonstrating that you do believe in sin and guilt. And the Course in Miracles is telling us that's what we're suffering from. Now, the Course in Miracles is telling us, that there is a way to be learning still, which means trial and error, making mistakes, and not feeling guilty about that. There is a way for other people in your life to still be learning and making mistakes, trial and error, and for you to not see them as guilty and give them guilt just because they made a mistake or they're still learning, right? There is a way to still be doing trial and error, which is what learning really means, and not give yourself guilt, which means not unconsciously request punishment, right? We have learned that you're guilty, and only when you get your punishment, then are you back to being innocent again. That's what we've all learned. And so when we do something that we feel bad about, what we do is we unconsciously then attract the punishment that we believe unconsciously will purge us of that guilt so that we can feel innocent again. If you believe that your mistakes make you guilty, then you are going to unconsciously ask for punishment from the universe to purge you from that guilt so you can feel innocent again. The Course in Miracles says that what every human being longs for in their heart is to feel innocent again. And so if you believe you're guilty And then when you do something you feel guilty about, you are going to unconsciously request that punishment so that you can be purged from that guilt, because it is the guilt, it is the shame that we feel that makes us unhappy. And so whenever you feel ashamed, whenever you feel guilty, you are going to unconsciously request punishment, thinking erroneously that that will purge you of that shame and that you'll be able to feel innocent, aka happy again. Okay. So if you want to be a happy learner, if you want to be able to learn easily from your mistakes so that you don't make them again, then you must recognize that guilt is only interference. It is only an obstacle to happiness, health, and wealth, and that guilt serves no useful function at all. So if you want to be a happy learner, learn how to be happy. If you want your thoughts to be free, if you want to learn how to be happy, you're going to have to recognize that fact about guilt, about shame, for yourself and also for others. Okay? Beautiful. All right. Okay, good. Good, beautiful. Now we're in paragraph 2. So, Greg, I'm just curious. I wonder if you can share this link to YouTube. I don't know, just a thought. But if you can, if you're able to do that, why don't you try that and see what happens. Okay, paragraph 2. Perhaps you are accustomed to using guiltlessness merely to offset the pain of guilt, which means perhaps you don't look upon guiltlessness as having value in itself. Okay, so he's saying perhaps the only value you see in guiltlessness is when you're being attacked, like when somebody's given you guilt. Perhaps the only value of guiltlessness that you see is when you need to use it when somebody is attacking you with guilt. Maybe you don't see guiltlessness as having value in itself unless you need to defend yourself against somebody else's attack. As a matter of fact, Course in Miracles tells us, we believe that guilt and guiltlessness are both of value, and that both guilt and guiltlessness represent an escape from what the other one doesn't offer us. In other words, we don't want only guilt or only guiltlessness. We want them both. We think that guilt and guiltlessness are of value, because we think that without both guilt and guiltlessness, we don't see ourselves as whole, which means happy. So we think we need both, right? I need guiltlessness when somebody's attacking me, where I can go, I'm not guilty, I'm innocent, right? We think we need both. We think we need both to be guilty, and we also need guiltlessness. But the only value we see in guiltlessness is to defend ourselves when somebody is projecting guilt onto us or wanting to give us guilt or blame us for something. Then, and so it says, but the truth is that you are happy, which means whole, only in your guiltlessness. That's it. Right? That's it. You don't need both guilt and guiltlessness. You know, you can only experience happiness. You can only learn how to be happy and experience happiness when you have accepted the fact that you are guiltless. You know, then it's telling us that you're not guilty because you're still learning. Learning is living here, it goes on to say. You know, just because you're making mistakes, just because you're learning by trial and error and making lots of mistakes, does not make you guilty. You are guiltless unconditionally, whether you are learning still, whether you know it or not. You are guiltless. That is the fact of our being. That is how our Creator created us to be, without guilt, without sin, and nothing can change that. And just because you don't know you're guiltless, just because you're still learning, which means still making mistakes, does not mean that you are guilty. You are guiltless no matter what, whether you're making mistakes or not. Your guiltlessness is your eternal, unconditional state of being that you were created as. That's what A Course in Miracles is telling us. And you don't need guilt to experience your guiltlessness. You don't. You don't need to defend yourself with guiltlessness to be guiltless. You don't need to have your guilt punished. You don't need to have your mistake or your guilt punished to purge you of guilt, to be innocent. You are guiltless. The Course in Miracles says that's how you were created by your Creator, and that's how you remain. You don't need guilt in order to receive the punishment to purge you of guilt so that you can experience guiltlessness. Right? Guiltlessness is our natural state. That's something that's very radical that A Course in Miracles teaches that you don't hear anywhere else. You just don't hear that concept anywhere else. That we were created without sin. We were created guiltless now and forever. That is a constant, eternal state, and nothing can change that. Nothing. Not any one mistake that you could ever make. No mistake that you ever make could make you guilty and deserving of punishment. Okay? You don't need to earn back your innocence by receiving punishment. That's what A Course in Miracles is teaching us here. And that's what A Course in Miracles is saying that you must learn if you want to experience happiness. Because A Course in Miracles is telling us here, you can't experience guilt or believe you are guilty, feel shame, and also experience happiness. It's very radical. What the Course in Miracles is saying is very radical and completely different than everything that we've ever learned. What we learned is you got to accept your guilt. You got to confess your sin if you want to be innocent and to be happy and to have peace. And what A Course in Miracles is teaching us is the exact opposite. And that's why A Course in Miracles is not more popular in the world today yet, right? Because it's telling us the exact opposite of everything we've learned. But listen, if everything that we've all learned in the past were true and accurate, then we would all be experiencing heaven on earth, right? So when you hear something from the Course that sounds exactly opposite than everything you've learned, then hallelujah. Because what we've learned from the past has not made us happy. Here we are still searching for happiness. And if what you learned in the past had the ability to truly fulfill you and make you happy, you wouldn't be searching. You would be happy. So in order to be happy, we've got to hear something that we have not learned, something that we don't yet believe. No, if our past beliefs have failed to make us happy and fulfilled, then they can't still be what we are clinging to if we want to be happy. If we want to be happy, but our past learning has not led to us being happy, then we need to hear something that we never heard before, that we never learned before, right? But when we hear things we don't believe in, we're like, oh, I don't believe that. Well, that can't be true. And then we dismiss it out of hand. Right? But if our past learning has not led to our experience of happiness and fulfillment, then obviously our past learning has failed. It has failed us. And if we want to be happy, then we're going to have to learn something that we don't currently believe. I know, it sounds crazy. But anyway, okay, beautiful. So then it says we are only whole, which means happy in our guiltlessness, and there's no conflict here. Though to wish for guilt in any way, to accept guilt or to give guilt in any way, you will lose appreciation of the value of your guiltlessness, which means you will push it from your sight. So to value guilt, to use guilt, to believe that guilt is useful in any way, shape, or form, whether you're using guilt to defend yourself, whether you're using innocence to defend yourself against somebody giving you guilt, or whether you're giving guilt to somebody else, to value guilt in any way, shape, or form, you will be pushing happiness from your sight. To believe that guilt serves any useful function at all, whether you're using guilt to get something, whether you're using guilt to get innocence from another, or whether you're using guilt, accepting guilt in yourself and believing, using guilt to unconsciously attract punishment, to feel innocent again. Whatever way you are going to be using guilt is how you are pushing your happiness from your sight. If you're feeling guilty for your mistakes, for learning, if you're giving guilt to others to take their innocence from them to make it your own, you are pushing happiness from your sight. Okay. All right. In other words, there's no compromise you can make with guilt and escape the pain that only your guiltlessness allays. You can't make any kind of compromise with guilt. Well, I'll just feel guilt a little, or I'll just give a little guilt to them. There is no compromise that you can make with guilt and escape the pain that only your guiltlessness allays. Okay. Now, something that, so the only way to be happy is to give up guilt, to be free of guilt, to not use guilt. The only way to be happy, healthy, wealthy, wise, the only way to be truly happy is to stop using guilt and to be free of guilt, not accepting guilt within your own self or from others, and stop using guilt or giving guilt to others, thinking, oh, well, if I can make them guilty, I'll be innocent myself, right? The Course talks about how I feel like I can purchase my innocence by giving guilt to others. But there is no compromise that we can make with guilt at all, feeling it, giving it, using it, whatever, that will enable us to escape the pain that only our guiltlessness brings. So if you want to release from pain, if you want to release from suffering, if you want to experience happiness, if you want to experience fulfillment, then the only way to do that is to give up guilt, is to allow that belief in sin and guilt to be corrected in your mind by your higher self. That's it. That's the only way. It's the only way to be happy. It's the only way to escape from the pain that the belief in sin and guilt has brought to you. And the Course in Miracles says that happiness and joy and love and peace and abundance, that is natural in the universe. That's what reality is. Right? And the only thing that, so Happiness, peace, love, joy, and abundance. You said that's the nature of reality. That is the universe as God created it. Well, then how come I'm not experiencing that? Okay. How could that be the natural way of the universe? How could that be reality when I'm not experiencing all that happiness, love, peace, and joy that never ends and only gets better? Well, the only way that you could not be experiencing the most natural substance, the most natural reality in the universe, is if you are blocking what is true. If you're trying to rebel against reality, that's the only way that you could experience something that is opposite to the natural universe and reality. Okay? Reality is peace, love, joy, innocence, guiltlessness. Okay, that's natural reality. That's the way it is. Why am I not experiencing it? Because I am blocking it. I am trying to believe something else. I'm trying to make up a reality, my own reality. That's the only way that you could experience the pain, the suffering, the lack, the death, the so-called punishment. That's the only way you could experience suffering, is to rebel against or to oppose reality. Okay? So suffering is unnatural. Pain and lack and fear and guilt, that is unnatural. That's you trying to make up your own reality, the reality called guilt and sin, that is not natural, is not true, is not the way of the universe, it's not the reality as God has established it. So suffering is unnatural. Guilt is unnatural, right? It's guilt and punishment and suffering is me opposing and rebelling against what is natural and true in the universe as God created it. All right. Beautiful. Moving to Michael Gallagher iPad. All right. Beautiful. Okay. So the next thing that this section wants us to learn about how to escape from the belief in guilt, how to allow the concept of sin and guilt to be corrected. Okay? Here is the truth that if you accept, it releases you from guilt. And it's this: learning is living here. Okay? Learning is living here. So making mistakes, trial and error, that's living here. So if making mistakes, trial and error is living here, then why would you need to feel guilty about your mistakes? Okay? And what's a mistake? A mistake is any time that you've chosen fear and guilt instead of love. That's a mistake. You know, I think I'm going to choose fear and anger and guilt and attack right now instead of love. Okay, that's a mistake, right? That's what a mistake is. And so living here is learning. So learning is living here. As long as you're here, as long as you're in a body, you're going to be making mistakes and choosing fear and guilt and attack instead of love. That's part of being here. Making mistakes is living here. Now, if that's true, do you need to feel guilty about learning? Do you need to feel guilty about making mistakes and choosing fear and guilt and attack instead of love sometimes? No, you don't. If learning and making mistakes is living here, then you don't need to feel guilty about learning. Anytime you've made a mistake and you've chosen fear, guilt, and attack instead of love, you're just learning. You just made a mistake. That's all that's going on. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean you're a failure. It doesn't mean you're a loser. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. And it doesn't mean that you deserve punishment. punishing yourself for making mistakes is not how you learn. Punishing other people for making mistakes is not how they learn, right? I mean, it's obvious, right? If punishment is what made us learn, then the first time we make a mistake and got that punishment, we would never make that mistake again. But is that the way it is? Is that the way it goes? Not even close. Okay. The Course in Miracles says that the problem that the mistake came from is that we learned we are guilty. Now we believe we're guilty. And so we attack from that. Okay. The problem is that we wouldn't do those unloving things and make those unloving choices if we didn't already feel guilty. And so punishing ourselves and giving ourselves more guilt, is that really going to correct that error? And how often has it happened when you punished somebody with guilt for a mistake they made where they never made that mistake again? Okay. When was that ever happened? The Course in Miracles says that our mistakes came from the guilt that we believed in. And so punishing ourselves or another for that mistake increases the guilt that made that mistake in the first place. I make these mistakes of choosing fear and attack and guilt instead of love because I felt guilty, because I believed in sin. So me being punished for that is only going to increase my sense of guilt, which is going to do what? Increase the mistake that I made. So now I'm making more mistakes. Okay? So if you really want to stop making a mistake of choosing attack and guilt and fear instead of love, then say no to guilt. Say no to guilt. If you really want somebody else to stop doing whatever mistake they're making that's causing pain and suffering for them and you, don't give them guilt. Release them from guilt. That person is making that mistake. That person is sick. That person is making more mistakes because they feel guilty. They believe in guilt. They believe they're guilty. That's why they're making that mistake. They're not making that mistake because they're a mean person, a bad person, a sick person. They're making that mistake because they have learned that they're guilty and they are unconsciously requesting punishment. And so if you give more guilt, you are going to make them you're going to support them in making more mistakes. That is not going to help them to not do whatever that thing is you don't want them to do more of. So the truth here is you don't need to feel guilty about your mistakes because learning is living here. Making mistakes, trial and error is learning. He is living here. And you don't need to give other people guilt for their mistakes because making mistakes and trial and error is living here for them as well. All right. Okay. So now it's going to teach us a very practical device for how to say no to guilt in yourself, from others, and say no to giving it to others. This is the practical device that we're about to learn, we're about to hear about how to allow ourselves to be free of guilt and how to release other people from guilt. Okay? And how important is this? If you can't be happy and experience guilt or believe in guilt, then learning how to allow the belief in guilt to be corrected, learning how to say no to guilt, is the ultimate thing. It's the ultimate thing in learning how to be truly happy, in experiencing true happiness. Okay, and so here it goes. Whenever the pain of guilt seems to attract you, like, ooh, if I just feel guilty, somehow I will be purged of my guilt and I'll be innocent again. Or, ooh, if I just say yes to feeling guilty, then I'll be a good person. Or if I just use guilt against them, then somehow I will be innocent and I will have control and have power, or I'll feel safe. Okay, whenever the pain of guilt seems to attract you, like, ooh, guilt is useful here. Oh, I could use guilt here to feel like a better person, or to get something from that person, or to get my innocence from that person. It'll make me feel safe. If I just give them guilt, if I just make them feel bad about themselves, then I'll feel safe and I'll feel secure. Or if I just feel guilty, then somehow that will enable me to feel innocent again. Okay, whenever the pain of guilt seems to attract you, first things first, remember that if you yield to that guilt, which means if you use that guilt within yourself or against another, you are deciding against your happiness, which means you will not learn how to be happy. If you yield to your attraction to the pain of guilt, if you yield to it, if you use it, believing it will somehow be useful to you, then you will be deciding against your happiness, which means you will not learn how to be happy. Okay, that's the first thing that you need to realize. And then after that, you want to say to yourself, gently, but with the conviction born of God's love for God's children, you need to say to yourself, what I experience, I will make manifest. And so, if I am guiltless, because learning is living here, don't need to feel guilty about learning. If I am guiltless, I have nothing to fear. And then decide, I choose to testify to my acceptance of my guiltlessness and not to its rejection. I want to accept my guiltlessness by making it manifest, which means sharing it. I want to accept my guiltlessness by sharing my guiltlessness. Let me bring peace to God's children from their Creator. Let me bring peace to God's children from their Creator. How? By releasing them from guilt, by not yielding to guilt's attraction. Okay, now, this is the prayer. This is I don't even know if it's a prayer. It's a formula. It's a thought formula that you can use to say no to guilt, to say no to the guilt over learning, over making mistakes. And we were taught that when you make a mistake, that only if you accept guilt and feel guilty can your mistake be corrected, and only by accepting your guilt can your guilt be purged. That's what we've learned. I got to accept my guilt. I'm guilty, and accept the punishment for that guilt in order to be purged from that, and in order to not make that mistake again. That's what we've learned about when you make mistakes. When you make mistakes, then only by feeling guilty and getting your punishment for that mistake, only then will you be innocent again, and only then will you not make that mistake again. That's what we've learned about learning, right? And nothing could be farther from the truth. It's obvious that approach does not lead us to stop making those mistakes. What we're hearing here is that it only makes us more guilty, which makes us make more mistakes, and bigger seeming ones. Hi, Demi. She says, guiltlessness accepted and sharing, peace to all, no yielding to guilt's attraction. Right on. Exactly. So So this is what we want to say to ourselves whenever the pain of guilt seems to attract us. Like, ooh, if I just feel guilty, I'll feel like a good person again and I won't make this mistake again. Ooh, if I just use guilt against that person, they won't make that mistake again. They'll stop doing that and then I'll feel safe. Whenever the pain of guilt seems to attract you, seems to be useful to you, you need to remember this and say this so that your belief in guilt and your use of guilt can be undone and corrected so that you can experience real learning and happiness. The goal of all learning is happiness. Okay? That's the only real goal of any learning, truly, right? And so if any learning is not serving to make you happy, then that learning, then you haven't learned it. So the only thing that we're trying to learn here is how to be happy. Okay? And so in learning how to be happy, what this is telling us is that here's one thing that will never help you to experience happiness, and it is called guilt. The acceptance of the guilt, the giving of the guilt, the believing in the guilt. Guilt serves no useful function at all. As a matter of fact, it is the one thing that is keeping you from learning how to be happy. You're saying you will not learn how to be happy if you yield to guilt. Wow. And just because you're learning, just because you're making mistakes, trial and error, isn't that what learning means? Trial and error, making mistakes, right? If learning didn't mean making mistakes, then it wouldn't be learning, right? So I really love that concept. Like the end of guilt, or the correction of guilt, is realizing that learning is living here, and learning means making mistakes. In other words, when I make a mistake and I choose fear and guilt and attack instead of love, it's just a mistake. I'm still learning, and I don't need to feel guilty about it. I don't need to punish myself in order to learn a better way. And I don't need to punish other people when they make mistakes, when they are still learning a better way, right? Guilt serves no useful function at all. It doesn't help them to learn a better way. It doesn't help you to learn a better way. Guilt doesn't make you stop making those mistakes. Giving guilt to others doesn't make them stop making those mistakes. As a matter of fact, it makes them feel more guilty, which now they're going to make more mistakes. Okay? So that's what we've got to learn. Okay, I'm going to say it again, and then we're going to move forward. Whenever the pain of guilt seems to attract you, remember that if you yield to guilt, then you are deciding against your happiness, which means you will not learn how to be happy. So instead of yielding to the guilt that's attracting you right now, what you want to do is you want to say something to yourself very gently, but with the conviction born of God's love for you. You want to say to yourself, what I experience right now, I'm going to manifest. And if I'm guiltless, then I have nothing to fear. And so I choose to testify to my acceptance of my guiltlessness and not to its rejection. I want to accept my guiltlessness by making it manifest, which means by sharing my guiltlessness. Let me bring peace to God's children from their Creator. Okay, so memorize that. Use it when you are tempted to yield to the attraction of guilt, thinking that guilt's going to somehow give you something that you want. Okay? All right. So that was paragraph 3. So I write this down, tape it up somewhere, put it somewhere where you can memorize that, and put at the top of it, whenever the pain of guilt seems to attract me, whenever I'm attracted to use guilt. Okay. Memorize this, because nothing could be more practical than this. Because we all learned that guilt is the way. We've all learned guilt is the answer. Guilt is the way. Whenever you've done something that was a mistake, feel guilty. Whenever somebody else has done something, made a mistake, give them guilt. We've all learned that guilt is the way to be a good person. We've all learned that guilt is the way to correct our errors. We've all learned that punishment is the way to purge that guilt and feel innocent again. So we're all, excuse me, we've all learned that guilt is the way to feel innocent, and guilt is the way to feel safe and secure in our relationships. And so we're all guilt addicts. And so we need to memorize this so that we can break that habit, so that we can learn a better way to be happy and to feel safe. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. It always seems like during class, the ego jumps in my throat, and all of a sudden I can't talk. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Hi, Daniel. Lovely to see you, dear. Perfecto. Gracias to you too. Oh, I love it. Demi says, hello, all looking and sounding lovely. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. No class could be more practical than this, especially in terms of learning how to be happy. And if you are not experiencing lasting happiness right now, which means fulfillment, then it's only because you didn't learn how to be truly happy. What we learned about how to be happy is you got to make other people feel guilty in order to control them so that they will do what you want them to do, and then you'll be happy. We learned in the past that if you want to feel like a good person, then the way to do that is to feel guilty and accept the punishment that purges you of your guilt, corrects your errors so that you won't do that again. That's what we've learned. So in other words, we didn't learn how to be truly happy. We learned how not to be happy, which is feel guilty and give guilt all the time for everything. Right? So, and don't forget, learning is living here. Making mistakes is living here. Excuse me, guys. Yeah, my ego don't want me to share this for some weird reason. I wonder what that is. Okay. Beautiful. So, write this down, guys. Put it on your mirror. Put it all around. Memorize it. Use it whenever guilt seems to attract you. Whenever it seems like, oh, if I just feel guilty enough, I'll feel like a good person again. Oh, if I just give enough guilt, then people will do what I want them to do, and I'll be happy and I'll feel safe and secure. That's actually what is preventing us from experiencing the happiness that we were created as and in, the happiness that is our natural state. Happiness is not something you got to earn. Happiness is not something you got to get. Happiness is not something you got to work for. Happiness is something that some people deserve and some people don't. Happiness is the nature of reality, is the nature of your reality. And the only thing that's keeping us from experiencing our nature, our reality, is because we are believing in something that is the exact opposite. We are believing in something that denies that happiness is our birthright and our natural state. And that is guilt. Guilt is the opposite of the fact and the truth of happiness as our natural state. Okay, paragraph 4. right, here we go. We'll need some chapstick for this. Okay. So, paragraph 4. Each day, each hour, and minute, and even every second, we are deciding between our crucifixion and our resurrection, which means each day, each hour, every minute, every second, we are deciding between our ego or our loving right mind. We are deciding between each day, each hour, each minute, and even every second. We are deciding between our ego, our guilty, punishment, suffering, unhappy mind, and our right mind. Each day, each hour, every minute, every second, we are deciding between our crucifixion or our happiness, our resurrection. We are deciding that all the time. Do I want to be guilty and receive the punishment that I deserve as a guilty person? Or am I, as God created me, guiltless now and forever, no matter what mistakes I make, and experience only the love, peace, and joy that is my birthright? I am deciding between those two things each day, each hour, every minute, and even every second. That's what I'm really doing all the time. Now, if you're going to choose for guilt, which means if you're going to choose for your ego, then that is the choice for guilt. If you're going to choose for your ego, that means you're choosing for guilt. Now, if you choose for the Holy Spirit in you, then you are choosing for guiltlessness. The power of decision is all that is yours. That's the last remaining power left to us as seeming prisoners of the world. The power of decision is all the power that is ours. Am I going to choose? Am I going to decide? The power to choose. Am I guilty and deserve punishment? Are they guilty and deserve punishment? Or am I guiltless and deserve only the love, peace, and joy and abundance that is my birthright as a child of God? Okay? The power of decision is all that is ours. That's my power. Your superhero power is the power of decision. Which one am I going to choose? I have the power to decide between those two voices in my mind. That is our superhero power, the power of decision of which voice that we are going to listen to and side with. That's our power. Now, I will always have the power to choose to listen to the right voice, the voice of my guiltlessness. No matter what mistakes I have made, I always have the power to decide for that, no matter what mistakes I have made. I also have the power to listen to the voice of my ego, which is the voice that tells me that I'm guilty and that I deserve only punishment. And that is my power, the power of decision. Which voice am I going to listen to? The voice of my guilt or the voice of my guiltlessness? The voice of my ego or the voice for God? Nothing can take from us that power of decision. Nothing. Which really means nothing can take from you your power to experience happiness, no matter what kind of suffering or what kind of mistakes you have made in the past. Nothing can take away from you the power to decide what you want to experience. All right. I love that. I love that idea that no matter what mistakes I've made in the past, I will always have the power to decide to listen to the right voice, the voice that speaks from my guiltlessness, and experience escape from the pain that all my mistakes brought me. Nothing can take that power away from me. Nothing can take that power away from you to choose and decide for happiness, no matter what kind of suffering you've been experiencing, no matter how long you had been deciding to listen to the voice that had brought you all that suffering. No matter how long you've been listening to that voice, no matter how many mistakes, no matter how many mistakes that you have made and are suffering from, no matter what kind of mistakes that you've made that you're suffering from, nothing can take from you the power to decide to listen to that better voice that speaks for your guiltlessness and experience escape from all the effects of those wrong decisions, meaning all that suffering. Hallelujah. Now, what you can decide between, that's fixed, because there are no alternatives except truth and lies. There are no alternatives to choose between besides the illusion of guilt and the reality of guiltlessness. Those are your only alternatives that you can choose between. And guess what? There is no overlap between them. There is no like, oh, I'm partly guilty and partly innocent. I'm both. No, there is no overlap between those two alternatives. You're either all guilty or you're either all innocent all the time. That's what A Course in Miracles is teaching us. There's no overlap. There's no like, well, I'm kind of guilty and kind of innocent. I'm kind of both. No, you're not. You're only one. And only one of them is the truth about you, and only one of them will actually produce lasting happiness. And the other one will produce only unhappiness. All right. And the reason there is no overlap between your guilt and your guiltlessness is because your guilt and your guiltlessness, they are opposites which cannot be reconciled, which means they cannot both be true. You cannot both be innocent and guilty. They cannot be both innocent and guilty. Okay? They're opposites which cannot be reconciled. So, and you, every hour and every day and every minute and even every second, you are deciding between those two alternatives. And what you experience in your life will be a result of which one you are choosing, which one you are deciding for. There is no compromise between you being guilty or you being innocent. Okay? And happiness goes with only one of them. And nothing can take away from you the power to decide again, to choose once again for the right choice, listening to the right voice, which is the voice that speaks for your guiltlessness. Making mistakes doesn't make you guilty. Making mistakes is learning, and we're all learning. Living here is learning. And so you're not guilty just because you're making mistakes. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for that. So we don't need to feel guilty for making mistakes. Don't need to feel guilty for learning. We're all learning here. There's nobody here who's not learning. Like it said, living here is learning. Right? As a matter of fact, you don't come here, Course in Miracles says, you're not born here if you're not making some mistakes. Right? The Course in Miracles actually says that coming here was a mistake, right? But just because your coming here was a mistake doesn't mean that being here has to represent that mistake. So, where have you ever heard in any other philosophy, anywhere, that coming here was a mistake, but that once you've made that mistake and you're here in a body, that doesn't mean that you can't choose once again. So yeah, it may have been a mistake to come here, but you can choose once again. Why? Because Nothing can take away from you your essential power to decide to listen to a better voice and to make a better choice. So don't feel guilty about learning. Everybody here is learning. There's nobody here that's not learning, which means making mistakes. All right. Hi, Shahira. Lovely to see you. Peace to you, my dear. All right. I love this section. This is one of my favorite sections. The guiltless learner. You know, this is teaching us how we can learn fast. This is how you can learn quickly and easily. Now, when you're not learning quickly and easily, then you make the same mistakes over and over and over and over and over. Okay? And that's what we call a pattern. Okay? What's a pattern? A pattern is like, I just keep making this mistake over and over and over. I don't seem to learn. I'm not learning. When you're not learning your lesson, you make it over and over and over without any different results. Okay? This lesson is teaching us why we don't learn things, and we have these chronic patterns. We have these chronic patterns because we're not learning, right? We're not learning how to make different choices and different decisions in our life situations. This section is teaching us how to actually learn how to make different choices in these situations that keep happening so that we can have a different result finally, right? It's like that Einstein quote that everybody uses, that the insanity of the definition of insanity is where you keep making the same decisions and expecting a different result. You keep doing the same thing, making the same decision, but expecting a different result. That's insanity. That's what it means to not be learning. All right. So this section is teaching us how to actually learn quickly so that your lessons don't take days, weeks, months, years, lifetimes. Like, I want to learn my lessons. I want to learn them quickly. I don't want, how, some of those lessons in our life, it's taken us years to learn how to do something different. Okay? I want to learn my lessons quickly and easily. Right? This lesson is teaching us how to learn our lessons quickly and easily so that we're not just repeating our mistakes for weeks, months, years, lifetimes, where it's like, oh, okay, here's my lesson, here's the mistake I've been making, here's a way I'm going to make a truly different choice in this situation so that lesson is learned, and now I go on to the next. Okay. I want to learn my lessons quickly and easily. I want to be a happy learner. I don't want to be making those same mistakes for year after year, lifetime after lifetime. This is the way to do that. And basically what this lesson is telling us is, if you want to learn that lesson so that you end that pattern, is when you recognize that you've made a mistake, then instead of giving yourself or somebody else guilt for that mistake, you don't use guilt. You don't give yourself guilt. You don't give yourself shame, and you don't give it to somebody else. Okay, now you are truly making a new decision, and now you can learn that lesson, and that pattern can stop. Okay. I just realized I need to plug in my phone. So I'm going to take this off. Or do I need to take that off? Let me see. Hold on, guys. Let me see what I need to do here. Okay. I'm going to take out this microphone. Plug in my phone. Okay. hold on, guys. I've got to make a little adjustment here. So I'll be right back. I've got to go under my desk. Okay. Okay, does that go? Let's see here. Okay. All right. Okay, I'm back. Okay, can you guys still hear me? I took out my microphone and put my charger in. Okay. All right. And I'm not going to feel guilty about not having my phone charged up before class. How about that? Okay, great. Now maybe I won't make that mistake again because I'm choosing not to give myself guilty for learning what to do, learning to make sure my phone is completely charged before class. All right. Okay, great. Beautiful. All right. Now we're on paragraph 5. Okay. Okay. All right, paragraph 5. The miracle teaches us that we have chosen guiltlessness, freedom, and joy, all synonyms. The miracle teaches us that we have decided for our guiltlessness, which also means our freedom and our joy. So a miracle is what happens when you go, okay, I'm experiencing this suffering, this unhappiness of some kind. And in the past, what I would do is I would make myself feel guilty, or I'd make somebody else feel guilty, thinking that that would somehow fix the problem. But I'm going to do something different because that didn't make me happy. I am going to decide that even though I made a mistake, I am guiltless. Even though they made a mistake, they are guiltless. Living here is learning, and so I'm going to side with my guiltlessness. I'm going to side with their guiltlessness, and then what results is what we call a miracle, some form of joy, some form of freedom. So the miracle of peace, love, joy, and abundance teaches you that you made a right choice. You chose for your guiltlessness. You chose for guiltlessness, your guiltlessness, their guiltlessness. You decided, hey, just because I made a mistake don't mean I'm guiltless. I'm still guiltless. And they are still guiltless even though they made a mistake, because that is the truth about us. Okay. And then after you've made that choice, then the result of that decision is what the Course in Miracles calls a miracle. In other words, the result of that is you're going to feel joy and more free. So the miracle demonstrates to you that you chose differently. Yay! You actually made a different choice. Yay! Instead of choosing to feel guilty or give guilt, you sided with guiltlessness for both of you. And then what resulted demonstrated that you made a new choice. You made a right choice. And that now you're experiencing joy and freedom, where in the past, your decision for guilt resulted in restriction, contraction, pain, suffering, lack, etc. Okay? Now, the miracle of joy and freedom and abundance and peace, love, and joy, the miracle isn't a cause. The miracle is just your effect, the effect of having chosen right, which means of having learned. Okay? You know you've learned when you get a different result than you did in the past. Now, the miracle of peace, love, joy, and abundance and freedom, it is the natural result of choosing right. And the miracle attests to your happiness that comes from choosing to be free of guilt. Okay? The miracle is the natural result of choosing right. The miracle is just attesting to your happiness that comes from choosing to be free of guilt. All right, so that's what we're learning here. Okay, the mistake that we had been making in the past was was always using guilt, choosing guilt. Like when you made a mistake, then you gave yourself guilt. And when they made a mistake, you gave yourself guilt. That was the mistake. And that was the pattern that kept on going. That was the chronic pattern that kept the suffering and the pain and the lack going. That was the mistake. Every time you made a mistake or someone else made a mistake, you chose guilt. You felt guilty or you gave guilt. You blamed. And that's what kept the problem going. And then, but then when you go, hey now, guilt is the problem, living here is learning. I don't want to choose guilt. I've got a choice here. I'm going to choose to be free of guilt and to not give guilt. Then now you have learned, and the peace, love, joy, and freedom that you experience as a result is your witness that you actually made a right choice. You actually chose something different, and good job. See, happiness actually comes from being free, from choosing to be free of guilt and not giving guilt, not using guilt. Beautiful. Okay. And so now everyone you offer release from guilt to, they're going to return that release from guilt to you. And everyone who you give guilt to, which is everyone whom you attack with guilt, they're going to keep that guilt attack, and they're going to cherish that guilt attack, and they're going to hold your guilt attack against you. Now, whether they hold your guilt attack against you or not, it's not going to make any difference, because you are going to think that they're holding your guilt attack against you. And it is impossible to offer what you don't want, which is guilt attack, without this penalty of thinking that they're cherishing that guilt attack and then now using it against you. That is the cost. That is the penalty of giving. Okay? Whatever it is that when you choose to give the guilt attack, the attack of guilt to another person, then they're going to do what? They're going to cherish that guilt attack, and they're going to hold your guilt attack against you. Now, whether they actually do that or not won't make any difference. You will think that they're holding your guilt attack against you and they're going to use it against you, right? And it doesn't matter whether they are or not, you're going to think that they are, because that's the penalty for giving. In other words, the cost of giving is receiving. So whatever you give is what you are going to receive. Whether it's coming from them or not, the cost of giving is receiving. So if you're giving guilt, which means attack, you will be expecting it from them. You will experience it. You will attract it, because that's the cost of giving. Receiving is the cost of giving. So always remember that when you are, always remember that when you are tempted to give guilt, which is an attack, to another person. Just remember, the cost of giving is receiving. So whatever it is you are giving, you will be receiving, whether you think that you're giving to them is justified or not. The cost of giving is receiving. Okay? Think about that before you give guilt to another person. Okay? Before you give anything to another person, before you ever respond to another person, remember, the cost of giving is receiving. Whatever it is I'm giving to them, I will be expecting back. Whether they are giving it back to me or not, I will be expecting it. Okay? All right. And either what you're giving is a penalty from which you're going to suffer, or what you're giving will be the happy purchase of a treasure to hold dear. All right. I just noticed that it's been an hour and a half since we have started. Actually, we started a little bit later then. So, yes. Okay. Let me see. So I think we'll stop here for today. this section is so amazing, so beautiful. I highly recommend going and finishing this section because nothing could be more practical towards the goal of learning how to be happy. This is the section that enables us to truly learn how to be truly happy. So study this section truly. And when you're going through this section or listening to this class again, whatever unhappiness you're experiencing right now in your life, bring that into this section and let it teach you what mistake you have been making that has brought that unhappiness to you. And then let this section teach you what decision, what better choice you can make that will enable you to experience the happiness, the peace, the love, the joy, and abundance that is your natural state, that is your birthright, that is available to you right now for the choosing. For the choosing. And remember, your real power is your power to decide what you are going to choose. Guilt or guiltlessness. The ego or your higher self, the Holy Spirit. Okay. All right. So you guys, I just want to do a couple of announcements before we complete. And I wanted to tell you that if you wanted to support this ministry, you can go to my website, divinerevolutionarq.com, and you can support this ministry. There's a way to give there. And if you want to learn more about what I'm doing, if you want also to be part of my monthly Course in Miracles chat group that I'll be doing once a week starting next month, then go to my website, divinerevolutionarq.com, and become a member. It doesn't cost anything to do that, but you can access my writings, my blog, my class schedule, and also my Course in Miracles recordings, my Course in Miracles playlist. So my classes, my Course in Miracles recordings, where I'm just recording Course in Miracles to music. You can access all that and connect with me more regularly through my website and become a member. So wonderful. And then also guys, Greg and I have changed our teaching night to every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Mountain Time. And that's Greg's and my class, Transforming Relationships Through A Course in Miracles. So if you would like to learn how to experience more happiness and peace and joy and freedom in your relationships, this is a great way to do that. In these Wednesday classes, Greg and I take whatever section Spirit told us to teach, we apply it to our relationship right in front of everybody, and then we support you in doing the same in all of your relationships. So that's every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Mountain Time. And we're doing that live streaming on this Facebook page and usually on my YouTube page. Right now I'm having some technical difficulties, but that's what it's supposed to be, on my YouTube page and also on this Facebook page, live streaming every Wednesday. All right. I appreciate you all more than I can say. Truly, thank you. Thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing. Thank you for your super chats. I appreciate all that. And thank you for sharing this class so that these ideas of A Course in Miracles can be shared with more people and strengthened in the world today. Thank you all. I appreciate you all more than I can say. And I'll see you next time I see you.